This is gonna be a quick video on how I take a chord progression like this. And do something like this. If you've been playing guitar for a while, then you've definitely come across these two terms. One is rhythm guitar and the other is lead guitar. And I don't know about you, but when I was learning guitar, I used to think that lead guitar was much cooler because you can do all of this stuff. And I used to think rhythm guitar was just this. But fast forward 7 years later, I think rhythm guitars, I don't want to say rhythm guitar, I just see them as the same thing now. But I won't complicate anything. For the sake of this video, I'll just call it rhythm guitar. I see rhythm guitar as more than just strumming a chord, but you can do all sorts of stuff. I can take the same A minor chord and do something like this. And just mess around a bit. I don't have to be stuck. Just so I'm gonna show you kind of how I can't give too much away, but I'll show you a lot of stuff. So just watch the video. Thank you. Please like and subscribe. Alright, let's get into it. Alright, so firstly I'm gonna change how you see chords. If you ask the normal person, can you play A minor? They'll probably play an open chord. Or they might play a bar chord on the 5th fret. Or a triad, or an inversion, or there's plenty of ways you can play A minor. But I don't see chords like a normal person. Theoretically, this is wrong, but I just see chords as the root note. Again, let me say that. Theoretically, I know a chord is 3 or more notes played at the same time. But I don't see it like that. If someone said play A minor, I'll just find my closest A note, let's say the 5th fret of the low E string, and that's my A minor chord. So because I only see it as one note, there's like 5 other strings left open that I can still play and add more to. And to me, this is where you can get creative and add your own colors if you know like some theory and how intervals work and whatnot. So the easiest way for me to explain this is to use the A minor pentatonic scale. And if you don't know what that is, here's a diagram. You're going to play the 5th fret and then the 8th fret of the low E string. And then the 5th fret and 7th fret of the A string. 5-7 on the D string. 5-7 on the G string. 5-8 on the B string. 5-8 on the high E string. And then you have the pentatonic scale. Don't worry too much about the theory, just follow along with what I'm doing. So, the next trick is you have to use your thumb. This is what Jimi Hendrix, John Mayer, and a lot of these players do. This will allow you to have the rest of your fingers free to do all of the other stuff. So a little exercise you can do, right, is while holding your thumb down on the 5th fret of the low E string, don't have your thumb straight like this. Keep it at an angle where your thumb's like pointing towards your right thigh. Mess around with the notes of the pentatonic scale while keeping that bump note as a drone. So I could do a basic thing like this. Every time I say 1, that's when I'll play the thumb note. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? So I'm keeping the pulse, I'm keeping the nice rhythm with that thumb note, the bottom note. That's holding everything together. That's like the important note. If you don't do that, then it's just going to sound like you're playing some random shit. You don't want that. Make sure that you're keeping a pulse with the bottom note. I'll do that again. So I'm keeping my thumb on the bottom note, and I'm just improvising, playing some random notes, nothing too fancy with those pentatonic notes. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 3. Yeah, it's hard to count and do that at the same time, but I think I did a good job at just that. So that's all I'm doing in principle. I've got my bottom note of the chord I want to play, and then I'll mess around with the notes around that bottom note. I'll try and make sure that any notes I play are higher than the bottom note, and avoid moving that bottom note too much, because the bottom note has to set the context. If the chord's A minor and you start changing the bottom note too much, it's going to sound like you're changing chord. So you want to keep the bottom note the same and not do too much with it, or at least the minimum. For the last section, I'm going to play the first shape of the pentatonic boxes, but for your guitar journey, you don't want to get into a habit of memorizing shapes, because they won't teach you how your notes interact with each other. You want to learn intervals, because intervals will teach you how to build any scale and any chord from scratch anywhere on the fretboard. So you don't need to Google this shape, that shape, cage shapes, this pattern, this guitar hack. You don't need any of that. Wherever you are on the fretboard, you're able to create whatever scale and whatever chord you want from scratch. So if you don't know how intervals work, then watch this video here and this video as well, and then come back to this video. But if you know how intervals work, then let's see this from an intervallic perspective. So far we've got the minor pentatonic like that, but we want to see what notes build the minor pentatonic scale. Our root note is obviously A, so we'll start on the 5th fret of the low E string. And then from there, we've got a flat 3, and then a 4, and then a 5, and then a flat 7. And there's your pentatonic scale, minor pentatonic I should say. 1, flat 3, 4, 5, flat 7. Okay. After that, it repeats, starting from the 7th fret of the D string, root, 1, flat 3, 4, 5, flat 7, then back to 1 again. And then we've got flat 3 after that. I'm not going to go any higher, we're going to stick to this first pentatonic shape, but I hope that made sense. Yeah, so now you want to know what notes are in your chord, around, or within this shape I should say. We know that a minor chord is built with a root, a flat 3, and a 5. If you don't know this, then now you know. If you don't know, well, now you know. Root, flat 3, 5 builds a minor chord. So on this diagram, where do you see a root, flat 3, and 5 stacked on top of each other? I'll let you have 10 seconds to figure it out. 3, 2, 1. Okay, well done. You figured it out. It's here. So you want to put your 3rd finger on the 7th fret of the D string. Then with your 1st finger, bar the G and B string on the 5th fret. And then add your thumb to the 5th fret of the low E string. And now we have an A minor chord, because our root is the 1, and then we have a flat 3 and 5, which gives it that minor sound. To mute the A string, I'm using my thumb. I just have my thumb over a little more to mute it. And then to mute the high E string, I'm using my 1st finger, like this part of my 1st finger. Bomber clap. Oh, if you can see it. Oh, I use the arch of my 1st finger. So any notes I'm not playing that come underneath this area of my finger, that's what I'm using to mute the notes. I could press it down to get a sound out of it, but I can just raise my 1st finger up to get like it muted. And I'm just using like this first section of my first finger, like above this line, to bar the B and G string. So what I want you to do is try strumming all the strings and making sure that the A string and then the high E string don't make a sound. I don't know if I'm in tune. There we go. Okay. Once you can do that, we're going to do a little Jimi Hendrix thing, and it's very simple. You have the bass, which is like boof, boof, boof. You've got the snare, which will be tch, tch, tch. And then you've got a fill, which will be like do, 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 do. So you got boof, tch, do, 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 boof, tch, do, 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 do. Oh, I look so silly doing this. Anyways, your thumb note, the root note, will be your bass, boof. And then the chord will be the snare. And then after that, you can do a fill using the pentatonic scale. The point of knowing what notes go into a minor chord is so that even though like a pentatonic scale is built with root, flat 3, 4 and 5 and flat 7, because you know what notes are in the chord that you're playing, you can avoid the notes that are not part of your chord. So as I'm playing the chord and messing around, I'm intentionally thinking, yo, my A minor chord's built with 1, flat 3 and 5. Let me make sure that whatever lick I'm playing will try and land on one of those notes, so it sounds like I know what I'm doing, if that makes sense. So if you know the notes in your chord and you know the notes in the scale around that chord, then you can connect the two and intentionally land on the notes within your chord. And a lot of people say this is like targeting chord tones. So this is a nice little exercise to do that. So I got bass, then snare, then I do a lick, and I'll land on a note within my chord. Here I landed on the flat 3. Bass, snare, bass, snare, and so on. So when I say 1, I'll do bass. When I say 2, I'll do snare, which is the chord part. And then when I say 3 and 4, that's room for me to do the little lick or fill with whatever the pentatonic notes are. So it'll sound like this: 1, 2, 3, 4, and bass. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 4, and 1. It is hard to count at the same time, so I'm not gonna count. I'm just gonna show you. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1. So on. That's all I'm doing. Bottom part of the chord, high part of the chord, and then using a pentatonic lick and repeat. But making sure that every time I say 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, that bass note's going. It's keeping the pulse of the song. 3, 4, 1. I have to show you guys how to strum this as well. This is going to be very hard to explain, so if you haven't liked or subscribed yet, subscribe right now. Let's move on to the next part. I can't lie, this part's going to be a bit hard, but if you stick with it, then you'll be very good at guitar. And if I can do it with my tiny hands, then you definitely can. So the first part, we're going to see how we can mute with the chord. And then the second part, we're going to see how we can mute with individual notes. By muting with the chord, I mean stuff like this. And then with muting notes, I mean stuff like this. So, I'm not expecting you to play the second part, but I'll show you the principle behind what I'm doing. For the first part, it's pretty simple. So, put your thumb on our bass note, 5th fret of the low E string, and we'll just play that. That's our 1, yeah? Earlier we did 1, 2, 3, 4, bass, snare, fill, fill. For the bass, we just play the bass. But before we get to the number 2, we'll do a little quick down up with muted notes. To mute the notes, I keep the chord shape the same, but I raise my fingers slightly so none of the strings make a sound. Like that. So I do 1, and then I'll do a quick down up. Like that. And then 2. 1, 2. 1. And if I gave us a counting, 1, 2, 3, 4, around 1, 2, 3, 4. In between 2 and 3, we're going to do the same thing with the quick down up muted strings. So it'll sound like this: 1, 2, 3, 4, around 1, 2, 3, 4. In fact, we can throw out 3 and 4. What I want you to practice is just 1 and 2, like this: 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. And make sure your wrist is loose, brother. No stiff, no stiff wrist, man. Like, make sure it's nice and loose. Anyways, bro, once you got that down, yeah, it's very simple. It's just bass, check a snare, check a bass, check a snare, check a bass, check a snare, check a boom, 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 check a cat, check a boom, boom, check a cat, check a boom, check a cat, check a boom, check a cat, check a boom, check a cat. That's hard to do. Anyways, the next part is learning how to mute the individual notes of the pentatonic scale, like this. How do we do that? If you put your first finger on the 5th fret of the G string, and then use the tip of your first finger to mute the D string, and then use the arch of your first finger to mute the B and E string. I want you to strum from the D string. Try your best to do it. If you hit the A string or whatever, then it's fine. But try and make the G string the only string that makes a sound. You can use your thumb to mute the E and A string. But really aim for the D string for this. Aim for the G string, my bad. And then add your 3rd finger to the 7th fret of the G string. Try that. Keep the same shape, thumb muting the E and A string, 1st finger on the G string, 5th fret, but add your 3rd finger to the 7th fret of the D string. Cool. Now try that with the D string. Same thing again, 5th fret of the D string, but use the tip of your 1st finger to mute the string above. So that'll be the A string. And then use the arch of your 1st finger to mute the G, B and E string. And make sure that the only string making a sound is the D string. You can use your thumb to mute the E string. Then add your 3rd finger to the 7th fret of the D string. So that's all I'm doing when I'm like doing all that fast stuff. I'm making sure that my muting's on point. And even if I hit a bum note here and there, it sounds kind of cool because it's nice and funky, right? So you can get away with it. But clean muting is really nice for this. If you're on the higher strings though, obviously you can't get your thumb to like go all the way down and mute the G string or D string and whatnot. So just make sure that your right hand, when you're strumming, you're separating your string sets, you're individualizing them. When I'm strumming, I'm thinking, yo, I got the lower strings for my lower notes. And then when I'm playing the higher notes, like on the B, G, or E string, that's when I'm strumming those strings specifically. So I'm not doing something like this, but I'm targeting those strings specifically. of that is just me keeping my first finger like in the same place I told you. Make sure that tip of your first finger is muting the string above. The arch of your first finger is muting the strings below. And then for any other finger, you can use the arch of the other fingers to mute any strings below it. Use your thumb to mute the E string or A string. And that's really it. There's nothing more to it. So what you can try doing is playing the pentatonic scale but with muted notes only. When you're playing the first 3 strings, aim for the first 3 strings when you're strumming. When you're playing the last 3 strings, aim for the last 4 strings when strumming. Like that. And the best way to see if you've got this down is to put it all together. So we've got later on you can do what you want with it, but these are just basic examples. So first one is just bass, chaka, snare, chaka, bass, chaka, snare, chaka. And then after that, for the fill, practice playing the pentatonic scale, but while strumming and making sure that your notes are muted. Another very common device that you can use to kind of beef up those single notes that you're playing is something called double stops. Double stops sound punchy, and all they are is 2 notes played at the same time. So if you played the 5th fret of the B and E string at the same time, that's a double stop. Now, there are certain notes within the pentatonic scales that sound nice with double stops. Of course, you can use any note you want. I do that. But when you're starting off, these are the notes that I'd suggest. And it's easier to explain with major pentatonic, but since I've already done this video in minor pentatonic, I'll just keep it to that. So we've got 1, flat 3, 4, 5, flat 7. Then it repeats. So if I'm playing an A minor chord, if I had to think in the context of minor pentatonic with those intervals on the screen that I'm showing you, then the double stop notes that sound really good are if you bar flat 7 and flat 3 at the same time, and then hammer on to 1 with your 3rd finger. So that'll be barring the 5th fret of the D and G string, and then hammering on to the 7th fret at the same time as soon as you play the double stops. Hammering onto the 7th fret of the D string, if I didn't say that. Like that. Yeah. The other place you can do it that sounds really nice is barring the 4th and the flat 7, and then hammering onto the 5th. So that'll be barring the 5th fret of the A and D string and hammering on to the 7th fret of the A string as soon as you play the double stop. So you've got these 2 little shapes here that are really nice. And if you know your minor pentatonic across the whole fretboard, as long as you know what your intervals are, then you can kind of steal this pattern and put it in different places. Again, it will be the same principle where your first finger will mute any string that's above it. So if we're barring the 5th fret of the D and G string, we'll bar the A string, and then the arch of our first finger will mute the B and E string, and then we'll hammer onto the 7th fret of the D string. Sorry if I'm explaining that too fast. Just slow down the video if you can. So if I was to like do double stops for my fill, it would sound like this. I'll say it one more time. You're barring flat 7 and flat 3, hammer onto the root note, or you're barring 4 and flat 7, hammer on to the 5th. And if you know where to play these elsewhere, you can do the same thing. Cool. So experiment with adding that to like the fill part of your the exercise I showed you. This will beef up your sound a lot, and if you know your 5 pentatonic shapes across the whole fretboard, then you can do this across 2 strings at a time to get a nice little slidey sound. the chord progression we're going to play is A minor, F, G, A minor, or something along those lines. But before we play that, I'm going to show you a video of me playing it on piano, and I just want you to take notice of what both of my hands are doing. On my left hand is going to be playing the bass notes, something like that, and I just want you to think of that being your thumb. And then in my right hand, I forgot what I did, but I just did some stuff on top, so that can be your other fingers doing just pentatonic or whatever skill you're doing on top of these notes. Here we go. Okay, for this to work, we want to be able to see our guitar like a piano. Now on the piano, if I wanted to see the key of C, which is just the C major scale, it would just look like all the white keys on a piano. And on a piano, it's not too hard to visualize. You just have to look at the keyboard or piano, and all the white keys are laid out for you in a nice linear way. On guitar, it's a bit different, but you can do the same thing, and this is a skill that you really want to be able to do. Now, if we had to put our guitar in the key of C, it looks something like this. Don't get overwhelmed by the notes, just think of it as you're looking at all the white keys on the piano, but for guitar. Now, if we had to play the C major scale starting from the 8th fret, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, then back to 1. And every note in that scale gives us a chord. We got C major, D minor, E minor, F major, G major, A minor, then B diminished, then back to C. The chord progression I played on the piano though was A minor, F, G, A minor. So within this diagram, within the key of C, this will be numbers 6, 4, 5, 6. A minor, F, G, A minor, 6, 4, 5, 6. That's our chord progression. Now, I don't like playing chords too high up, so I'll look for another place that I could possibly use my thumb to play 6, 4, 5, 6. We know we can play 6 on the 5th fret of the low E string. We can play 4 on the 1st fret of the E string. And then we can play 5 on the 3rd fret of the E string. Nice. To make things easier to visualize, I'll take out 2 notes of C major key scale diatonic. So now it's C major pentatonic across the whole fretboard rather than diatonic. Now we've got pentatonic, it's a bit easier to see. If I'm on 6, which is A minor, looking at it from a pentatonic perspective, we've got this shape that we did earlier. And if we do that chord thing, then we can do this. I'm just taking the chord and doing what we did earlier, and then using notes within this scale to make some shapes up. And you might notice that only 6 is highlighted. This is how I see things. I see my root note, that's my chord that I was talking about. Then after that, as long as I know what notes are within that key, I can mess around and, juggle them to make some nice melodies. The next chord in the song is F, and that's 4. And that's going to be on the 1st fret of the low E string. I forgot that major pentatonic doesn't have a 4. How am I going to explain this? Okay, quick one. Basically, major pentatonic is made out of 1, 2, 3, 5, 6. Now, 4 is not part of 1, 2, 3, 5, 6. So, we're going to have to add an extra note, but it still stays the same. So this time will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Because now we're on an F chord, we have to add 4 because 4 is our F note. Anyways, let's get back to it. So now we're on F here. This is what I can see around my notes. I see that pentatonic shape that's here. I think that's shape 3. No, shape 4, shape 4. And I'm just doing that pentatonic shape but adding a 4 to it so it works with my chord. We can do the same thing again, and then the next chord in our progression is 5, which is a G. And here it's around shape 5 pentatonic. So I can use shape 5 pentatonic to make some melodies. Obviously, it helps if you know what note to make a chord because you can start adding them in your little noodling. But if you don't know, then you can go with pentatonic. So what we're going to do is this. We're going to do A minor, F, G, A minor. But we're going to do it step by step. So we'll do thumb first. 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then you can add the chord in. But add the chord on the 2. So we got A minor. 1, 2, 3, 4, F. 1, 2, 3, 4, G. 2, 3, 4, A minor. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then see if you can add the muting thing with it. This is going to be a little bit tricky, but have a go at it. I'll make it slower. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 1, 2, 3, 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 4, and 1. And then after that, this is the tricky bit, yeah. This is where we add the pentatonics in. So for A minor, obviously we use the shape we used earlier. For F, you use this area. And then for G, you use this area. And yeah, that's really it. See if you can do the boom, chaka, chik, chaka, boom, chaka, chik, chaka. And then add the little fills in. That's what it should sound like. Do it very slowly and use this diagram. If you can play the chords in different places, then go for it. But that's basically how I think with rhythm guitar. I don't just think. I can see all the notes within a key that work with whatever I'm going to play underneath. So yeah, try that and good luck. The cool thing about this is that once you understand this concept and you understand how the fretboard actually works, you can start marrying different scales with chords to get different colors. So let's say we're on A minor, we don't have to use A minor pentatonic like we did this lesson. If you know your A minor blues scale, you can add that in. And I know that's a basic example, but it's one of the colors you can add. So on. Let's say I wanted to add A minor Dorian, I could do something like this. Let's say I wanted to do A minor Phrygian, I could do something like this. I could start adding in these little modal notes while I'm strumming to kind of get that color out of it. You can do with a diminished scale. That's what I'm working on right now. I don't know how you do double stops with it, but I want to learn. Same with augmented, I'm guessing. But there's so many colors you can add once you know how these chords and scales relate to each other, and you don't see them as shapes, but you can kind of see the intervals within them. So yeah. You can use intervals as well to get some nice lines over your chords. So you can use fourths, fifths, sixths, sevenths, octaves. You can use thirds. And you can get some sounds like this. But that's what you can do with it. You're not limited to like just playing chords. You can do all this other stuff with it. So if you found value from this lesson, then, you know, like and subscribe. If you want to go deeper into this stuff, then I've done a video here on like thirds and sixths. But if you want like actual structured lessons on how to like navigate the fretboard that you can just study at your own pace, then join Guitar Alchemy. We've also got a Discord community that you can join. Share what you've learned, share what you're practicing, and yeah, it's a nice place to be. I look forward to seeing you there. So links in description, and have a nice day. It's like 3 a.m. here now, so you know you better like and subscribe. If you don't, then shame on you, but if you do, then like much love. Have a good day. Peace.